So my first week of teaching is now officially completed. On Tuesday was my first day, and I don't think I'm allowed to say my school names, but it's the biggest one in my area, or at least that I was assigned to. It's rush hour. It's like 10 minutes or so from my apartment, so that's also pretty cool. Same with my other big ones, so it's nice that my two big schools are the two that are the closest, and they're also the two that I will be going to most frequently. My first lesson, I was really nervous for it, but as soon as I got through that lesson, I was pretty much fine. I was pretty relaxed, and it actually came strangely natural to me. Also, the fact that the little Japanese children are absolutely adorable, so it's makes it a lot less stressful to have these eager little uh, children who want to learn English just staring back at you with awe and uh, bewilderment that some strange tall man is now teaching them a foreign language. So that definitely helps. So in my previous video, the one with my apartment, I said that I was going to talk about the differences between public school teaching and the eikaiwas, which I don't think I went into too much detail. But basically, eikaiwas are private conversational schools, which are usually ran by big corporations, or most of the teaching done in Japan is run by some sort of big corporation. But the eikaiwas, you teach an average of 5 days per week usually. Um, but unlike the public schools, you don't have set days off. It's just kind of whenever the company decides to give you your days off. So it usually isn't 2 days in a row, at least from the reviews and research that I did before taking this job. For most of the big corporations, they also push you um, to sell things like extra lessons and extra books and classes and CDs and blah blah blah. And it really didn't seem like actual like teaching to me. It just kind of felt like teaching was um, kind of like a side job as opposed to selling things to the kids. Um, but with those, you solo teach and you do get paid more than going the public school route. So if you don't mind selling things to children, adults, teenagers, middle-aged people, um, then you do get paid more. So that is a bonus. Um, as far as public school route, most or pretty much anyone that's not in the JET program usually gets paid around 230,000 yen per month, which roughly it's like 2,200 bucks a month. After living expenses and whatnot, it's like 1,200 bucks or so. Or that's based off of their like budget average. So it obviously changes from person to person and location to location. I really don't spend any money on any like crazy trips or whatever. So the most I spend money on is like food basically. Um, and obviously, as I think I mentioned in my previous video, I basically live at 7-Eleven because it's one, a 3 minute walk from my apartment, and two, the convenience stores here are strangely convenient and they actually sell decent food for pretty cheap. But anyway, more on that later. So the Akai was as a final conclusion type thing. One, you get placed in bigger cities because they really can't survive in sort of like the rural farmland areas that everyone seems to think that that's where you get placed for public school teaching. But I guess if you're from like New York or San Diego, Los Angeles, Miami, whatever, then some of these cities will seem like kind of like out in the middle of nowhere in the sticks or whatever. But to me, who comes from Cleveland, Ohio, it's not anywhere close to being the sticks. Uh, but anyways, so pretty much big city placement, more money than you'll make teaching public schools. You will not get 2 days off in a row, and if you do, it's pretty unlikely that you'll get it again. So it's hard to really plan any sort of trips or whatever. But for the fourth point, if you do take the public school route, then as long as your company approves it, then if you want to do the Eikaiwa teaching on the weekend or at night or whenever you want to, then you can do that. Because in my training session, there was a couple. example stories that my trainers told us all about how some people would do the public school teaching during the day, and then at night and on the weekends they would do the eikaiwa teaching because apparently they needed a astronomical amount of money, um, or they just wanted to save and plan for trips or whatever, or just save and go and get their master's, PhD, buy a house, buy a car, whatever. Um, so, anyways, public school teaching, you are basically kind of a pillar of the community in a sense, because being a sensei in Japan doesn't uh, only mean that you're a teacher. It also means that you could be a doctor or a lawyer. It's usually anyone that has some sort of like extensive training. Um, and obviously, being a sensei, there are certain expectations that you need to uphold. It's basically just be a good person and don't do anything skeezy or sleazy or whatever. So for most of us, it's not an issue whatsoever. You do get paid less, like I said, but it's 100% livable on. Um, Unless you're living in the city, but if you're going to do the public school teaching, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to get placed in a big city like Tokyo or Hiroshima or Okayama or Osaka or wherever. Because most of those positions are held by people who have been living in Japan for a while and are also fairly fluent in Japanese, or at least more so than any of the people coming over for the first time are going to be. There is one or two people that were a part of my training session that have studied Japanese for a pretty good number of years. Why they didn't go on to be translators, I'm not entirely sure, because you can make a an absolute killing translating documents, whether it's like official government documents or personal documents, business documents, whatever. But translating, you can make a pretty good killing off of, and save some money and pay your bills. And you can also obviously live wherever you want as long as your income from translating can subsidize what your living costs are. So you can live in Tokyo, but you have to make enough money translating to be able to sustain that, because Tokyo is a very expensive city to live in, just like any city in the world. Um, so there's that. So you get paid less with public school route, but you are considered a sensei, and it's a pretty good ego boost. Not to sound too conceited, but it is pretty cool to have people look up to you and respect you, and yeah, just basically treat you like essentially you're pretty much like a god to these kids, because you're teaching them some language that most of them have no idea about, and you're basically giving them a whole nother path that they can take in life, which is number three. Um, because most of these kids are almost sort of shoved into this like Japanese student mold that the Japanese society tends to press everyone into, which it's not entirely bad, but for anyone that wants to express any sort of individuality, like most of us in the U.S. or Europe or wherever you're from, mainly not Asian countries, because growing up we were always told to be who you are. Obviously, time period permitting, because God forbid, like in the older times, you're anything other than a rich white person, or I guess in today's consideration, you're either a male or a female. But I'm not going to get into that because I'll turn into a 45-minute video about that. So, anyways, you basically give these kids a extra avenue to explore who they are and to actually tell their classmates what they like, because in most Japanese schools, there's not a whole lot of options to express your individuality or your likes and dislikes or whatnot. Because basically, it more or less consists of your teacher basically just repeating stuff and writing stuff on the board, and almost the whole class are basically just sitting there writing stuff down. Okay, x plus y equals a or whatever. Math. I'm obviously not a math person. Or history or whatever the subject is. It's basically just kind of soak the information in, and then kind of sponge it all back out for the plethora of tests that Japan has. But I think the public school route is a lot more rewarding. Um, it also is pretty cool to have just random days off because it's either they're doing testing or it's a public holiday. You also get the weekends off almost always, unless the school asks something extra of you. But for most of the companies, they will take that into consideration, and the schools will too. They'll take it into consideration and try to give you off another day that week or whatever, just to kind of keep you under hours. For most of the places, they will try to keep you under a certain amount of hours. Like I think my contract hours are like 29.5 or something like that. A lot of it's planning hours, which it does come in handy, especially like if they spring some lesson on you last minute, then you're like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? That's what a lot of those planning periods are for. Um, you're pretty much not allowed to do anything fun for the planning periods because then it basically seems like you're goofing off, and a lot of the teachers won't really kind of like, oh, don't do that because Japan is a really passive aggressive society just because they don't like confrontation. So they'll go to someone else, and then that someone else will usually tell you like, oh, hey, look, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Um, so basically, just plan for lessons or learn Japanese like I'm doing. Uh, so they also do really like it when you spout some Japanese at them, or they just catch you, practicing katakana or a hiragana. Um, you know, just study, don't goof off. It depends on the school, but none of my schools have let me leave early so far. A couple of the other teachers here, they let them leave an hour and a half or 2 hours earlier, like just whenever they're done, which would be cool because a lot of the lessons really aren't very difficult to plan for, um, or at least they aren't for me. Anything last minute, it basically just comes down to either drill, because obviously in Japanese society, drilling is very important because that drilling is learning basically in Japan, or play games. I teach elementary schools, so games are always fun. Also, with the more rowdy kids, because it seems like almost every school that I've had so far has had one class of rowdy kids. And a good way to get the rowdy kids to not be so rowdy is, at least what I found, is humor and games, but not games where they're all moving around at once, because then that just kind of just almost ensures that your class will be completely chaotic and disrupted. But what I like to do is play this thing called the matching game on the electric boards that Japan basically just kind of imported, or basically almost every school has a like smart board, or is what we call them in America. But there's a pretty cool feature on the book software, at least for elementary schools, is there's these little there's the big flashcards and there's the little flashcards. The little flashcards are cool because you can do this thing called the matching game, and like say you're doing grammar or you're doing letters or shapes or flags or whatever, then you put two of each thing. So you go like American flag, Japanese flag, Kenyan flag, and then you demonstrate what you want the kids to do, because obviously you can't just spout out some complicated English because they're not going to understand it. There's kind of look at you like that. I've already done that once or twice, and that's basically the exact look I get is just so simple English. It definitely helps considerably to try and practice that because as an English major, I obviously tend to get very elaborate and flowery with my language. Um, but anyways, the matching game's cool because you just call one kid up at a time, and then that kid taps the card. You go, oh, okay, so A or America. Then you call up another kid, and that kid touches another card. If it's a match, you go, oh yay, good job, because praise is key for this, or at least for any sort of teaching or anything that someone else is learning. Praising is key because even if they're frustrated, if you praise them, then it's more incentive to either kind of push through whatever obstacle they're at, or it just kind of, I don't know. Praise is good. I like being praised. Most people like it. Most sane people like being praised. And so, like I said, the matching game's cool because it's even though it's a class game, only one person's moving at a time. So it keeps the kids focused on the game rather than focused on disrupting your class. Obviously, with some of the kids, it's kind of it's going to happen regardless whether or not you play games. So just kind of figure out how to reach that kid, and it'll pretty much work most of the time. There's been a couple so far where it's just sort of like a lack of discipline thing, because the same thing that's been in America for a while, just the whole like, oh, I'm not going to be a parent, oh, I'm going to be his best friend. Yeah, so there's absolutely no discipline with a lot of the kids these days. Not to sound like a grouchy old 9-year-old man, but hey. Uh, so the same thing is currently happening in Japan. It's nowhere near as bad as in America. Like I know it probably sounds like some of his kids are just awful, but it's not awful whatsoever. Like coming from Cleveland, Ohio, if there's some kid just like repeating back what I say but loudly, or he's just kind of like moving his arms or just hyper. Like one, he's a kid. He's gonna be hyper, especially the younger boys. Like really hyper, a lot of energy, not a whole lot of opportunity to disperse that energy, especially trying to get one of them to sit in a chair for, what is it, like 8 hours a day or something like that is their school days. So yeah, it definitely could be worse. It could be having someone, slugging the kid next to him or shouting random obscenities. Well, actually, kind of the obscenities wouldn't really matter because I probably wouldn't understand them. So kind of a plus. But yeah, teaching is pretty fun here. Like I said, with the Japanese little children being so adorable, it makes it pretty rewarding, especially when some kid comes up to you after class and goes, "Oh, hello, how are you?" And then it just kind of like melts your heart. Yeah, there are a couple kids who are obviously like way past what my expectations were. Actually, there's one school in particular where their third graders are more advanced than some of the sixth graders in my other schools. Um, but honestly, like that literally just comes down to what the Board of Education and what the school is teaching them, and what the school wants them to learn, and how early they also implement that stuff. Because even though some of the things for third graders or whatever might be too complicated, if you get them started early and you make it fun, then they're going to be a lot more apt to learn whatever you're teaching them. Because no one, I mean, very few of us want to do something that's boring. We all want to do something that's fun or at least enjoyable in some sort. And with the public schools, it definitely allows you to do that. At least in the elementary schools, in junior high school and high school, it's basically just soul sucking grammar. And as an English major, even I find grammar soul sucking. So, with as much drilling as the Japanese students are exposed to, it is kind of nice to be that like one shining beacon and trying to make some soul sucking grammar rule even like a little bit fun. Um, I don't teach any junior high schools, but my thought is that there's not a lot of room for games and whatnot, just because one, I mean, they're also trying to prep these kids for taking their high school exams, and then in high school you're prepping for college exams if they go to college or not. They still have to take most of the exams. Um, so you really don't want to be that teacher that prevents that kid from getting into college because you decided to try and break the Japanese mold on their education policies. So try to make it fun, but don't try to go overboard and try to be that one person who thinks that they're gonna break the mold, because you're not gonna break the mold. It's like ingrained into the Japanese society, because they're a lot more. They have the group think mentality. So if it's good for the group, it's good. If it's good for the individual, but bad for the group, it's not happening. But in America, if it's good for the individual, cool. If it's good for the group, but not good for the individual, we're not doing that. So it's definitely a pretty cool mindset and a pretty cool thing to experience. But as I just looked up my videos now, About to hit 20 minutes. So if you want to stay for longer, I think I'll make a part two because I really kind of just went off on a tangent on this one. So sit tight. I will upload this in a moment. So thank you for watching again, and please continue to watch my videos if you are interested in them. If you're not, then hey, I'm not going to force you to watch them, especially being probably almost 25-minute to 20-minute videos every time, just because I want to post videos on sort of like some sort of like at least a daily or weekly regimen where I post videos on Saturday, so you're not wondering, oh God, like is he gonna post a video today? Is he not gonna post a video today? It'll be on Saturdays, like I said in my last video, because these are pretty much the days that I have the most time. Sundays I'm probably just gonna be wiped out and just gonna want to relax before I have to go back to work again. Um, I don't do a lot as far as recess goes. Uh, I know some of the teachers like go and play basketball or go and play soccer, baseball, frisbee, whatever the kids want to do. They go out and do it. But I really don't. If the kids ask me to, then I always say I will. But uh, it just, I don't know. It is what it is. So, like I said before, thank you for watching. I don't think I'm gonna post a second video today. I might, if there's more there than I want to say in the next hour or whatever, then I'll throw up another one. But thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.